6.4 million years ago, the world was a canvas of endless night and brutal sun. Life was a flicker, a fragile candle in a hurricane of predators, famine, and fear. We weren't the rulers of this earth. We were its prey. Every day was a battle, a desperate scramble for survival. And the night. The night was a vast, unforgiving darkness, filled with the howls of things that hunted in packs and the silent, patient gaze of things that waited. But in that darkness, a whisper began, a promise of warmth, of safety, of power. A thing born from two sticks, a spark, and a terrible primal sacrifice. This is the story of a female Homo habilis named Anya, and the impossible choice she made to steal the light from the gods. A choice that would forever change the course of human history, a choice paid for with a debt of blood. The savannah was a vast hostile sea of ochre and bone. The air, thick with the scent of dust, decay, and the metallic tang of dry blood, hung heavy and still. A relentless sun beat down, a merciless judge overseeing a world of endless suffering. For Anya, a female Homo habilis, the world was a series of choices, each one leading to a new and more terrifying uncertainty. Her small band, a fragile collection of a dozen souls, was teetering on the brink of extinction. The dry season, a long, agonizing death, had tightened its grip on the land. The watering holes were nothing more than cracked earth, the fruit trees barren, their branches like skeletal fingers clawing at the empty sky. Hunger was a constant, gnawing presence, a physical ache that overshadowed all other thought. Anya's son, Kale, a small boy with the same wide, hopeful eyes as his mother, whimpered softly, his tiny hands clutching at her tattered loincloth. He was starving. She could feel the tremors of his hunger, the hollowness in his small body. Her mate, Jorn, a once strong hunter now gaunt and weary, stood on a small rise, his eyes scanning the horizon with a look of defeated despair. Their crude stone tools, their only defense, felt useless against the overwhelming might of their world. A deep, guttural despair had settled over the group, a collective shadow that made every movement slow and heavy. Anya knew they were dying. The old ones, their bodies failing, were already fading. The children, their bellies swollen with a terrible emptiness, were next. The thought of Cal's death was a physical pain, a clawing agony in her chest that made her want to scream. She had to do something. Anything. But what? Their knowledge was limited. They knew how to sharpen stones, how to hunt small, pathetic prey. They knew how to find the few remaining roots and berries. But they didn't know how to make the world bend to their will. They were simply surviving, barely. The night was their worst enemy. The darkness, a heavy, suffocating blanket, was a hunting ground for unseen terrors. The low, guttural roars of saber-toothed cats, the chilling howls of hyena packs, were the soundtrack to their sleepless nights. The single small fire they managed to make from rubbing two sticks together, a crude, pathetic thing that often died before the sun rose, was their only comfort, their only defense. The smoke, a thin, acrid ribbon in the air, was the only thing that kept the predators at bay. But the wood was scarce, and the fire-making process was arduous, often taking hours of painful, repetitive labor. One evening, as the last rays of the sun bled across the horizon, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry orange, Anya saw something. A lightning strike in the distance, a brilliant searing scar on the dark canvas of the sky. A few minutes later, she saw it again. A plume of black smoke rising from the distant, thick jungle. A wildfire. A sign, not of destruction, but of possibility. The jungle was dangerous, filled with beasts they couldn't hope to fight. But the fire was a symbol of power, of light in the darkness, of a way to cook the tough meat they managed to find, to keep the predators away for good. She looked at her son, his small body shivering with cold and hunger. She looked at Jorn, his face a mask of silent grief. And she looked at the fire, the small, pathetic flicker of light that was their only friend in a world of enemies. A new thought, a dangerous and terrifying one, took root in her mind. They had to go to the jungle. They had to steal the fire. It was a fool's errand, an insane, suicidal mission. But the alternative was a slow, agonizing death. As she stared into the fading embers of their small fire, she knew. To truly survive, they had to embrace the very thing that terrified them most. The journey to the jungle was a slow, grueling march through a waking nightmare. The sun, a brutal, unforgiving eye, bleached the world of all color. The air, thick with the scent of burning wood and the metallic tang of ancient rock, was heavy and hot. Anya, with Kale clutched to her chest, moved with a desperate, frantic urgency, her eyes fixed on the plume of black smoke rising on the horizon. The other members of the group, a motley crew of gaunt and weary souls, followed her, their faces a mixture of fear and a fragile, desperate hope. They were a flock of sheep being led to slaughter, their trust in their leader a thin, fragile thread. The savannah gave way to a dense, humid jungle, the trees a thick, tangled mess of vines and thorns. The air, heavy with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, was a profound shock to their senses. They were intruders in a world that did not belong to them. The ground was littered with the bones of animals, bleached and silent, a grim testament to the jungle's unyielding cruelty. The sounds were different here. The calls of exotic birds, the low growls of unseen predators, the incessant buzzing of insects. Every shadow was a hiding place, every rustle a warning. As they got closer to the fire, the heat became a physical presence, a wave of hot air that pressed down on them, stealing their breath. The crackle of the flames, once a distant promise, was now a loud, hungry roar. They moved with a slow, deliberate caution, their bodies low to the ground, their eyes wide with fear. The fire was a monster, a raging, ravenous beast that devoured everything in its path. Trees, vines, animals, all were consumed by its insatiable hunger. It was terrifying and beautiful, a thing of pure, unadulterated power. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the roar of the fire. A low, guttural shriek followed by the crashing of undergrowth. A pack of ankylosaurs, their massive, armored bodies like living tanks, stampeded through the brush, their small, dark eyes filled with a blind, panicked terror. The fire had driven them from their homes. The group scattered, diving behind rocks and into thick bushes, their bodies trembling with fear. One of the men, a young hunter named Talo, was too slow. A massive foot, armored and heavy, came down on him with a sickening thud. The sound was a punctuation mark on their terror, a chilling reminder of their fragility. He was gone, just like that. A life extinguished, a body crushed. As the stampede faded, the jungle fell into a stunned silence. The roar of the fire seemed to mock them, its power a grim reminder of their impotence. They were lost. They were terrified. They had come for the fire, but they had found only death. Jorn, his face a mask of grief and fury, turned to Anya, his eyes filled with a raw, primal hatred. "You led us here," he growled, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. "You brought this upon us." The accusation, though silent, hung in the air, a physical weight. The others looked at her, their faces a mix of fear and betrayal. They were not a group anymore. They were individuals, lost and terrified, their fragile trust in each other broken. Anya, her heart a hollow drum, looked at the fire, its flames dancing and swirling, a beacon of both hope and destruction. She knew what they had to do. They couldn't just take the fire. They had to learn how to control it, how to feed it, how to make it their own. But how? They had no knowledge, no tools. And as the night descended, a cold, silent predator in its own right, she saw a flicker of movement in the flames. Not an animal, not a stick, but a figure. A dark, twisted silhouette, dancing in the heat, beckoning her closer. It was a hallucination, A trick of the light? Or was it? The fire had a secret, and it was waiting for her to find it. The night was a vast, inky blackness, a suffocating blanket of silence and terror. The fire, now a massive, hungry monster, cast long, dancing shadows that writhed and twisted like demons in the humid jungle air. Anya and her small, broken group had found refuge in a small, rocky crevice, a safe haven from the fire and the predators it had displaced. But the safety was an illusion. The air, thick with the smell of smoke and the acrid tang of burnt flesh, was a constant reminder of their precarious existence. They were trapped between the fire and the unknown horrors of the jungle. Jorn, his face a mask of bitter resentment, had separated himself from the group, his body a silent, angry presence in the darkness. The death of Talo had broken something in him. He saw Anya not as a leader, but as a curse, a harbinger of death. The others, too, had retreated into themselves, their faces a collection of individual griefs and fears. They were a group in name only, a collection of broken souls waiting for the end. Anya held Kale close, her body a shield against the cold night and the even colder reality of their situation. The boy was shivering, his small body a fragile warmth against her. She knew she had to do something. The fire, their only hope, was a riddle she had to solve. She had to understand its language, its secrets. As she stared into the flames, a low, mesmerizing hum seemed to emanate from the heart of the inferno. She saw the same dancing figure again, a twisted silhouette that beckoned to her, a phantom woven from heat and light. It was a delusion, she told herself, the result of hunger, fear, and exhaustion. But as she watched, the figure seemed to point, not at the fire, but at something near it. A log, a large, gnarled piece of wood, its surface scorched and black. Ignoring the fear, ignoring the warnings of her own mind, Anya crawled out of the crevice, her body low to the ground. The heat was a searing physical presence, making her skin prickle and her eyes water. She moved with a silent, deliberate purpose, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. She reached the log, its surface still warm to the touch. It was not just a log. It was a tool. The fire had not been born of a lightning strike alone. It had been born from a different source, from something that had been burning for a long, long time. As she moved closer, she saw it. The log was hollowed out, its interior a dark, burnt-out cavity. And inside the cavity, there were things, mud of animals, but of a different kind. Smaller, more delicate. A skull, its jawbone missing. The bones of a hand, its fingers long and slender. And beside it, a collection of charred sticks arranged in a deliberate pattern. This was not a natural fire. It was a deliberate, man-made thing, a burial ground, a ritual site. The fire was not a gift from the gods. It was a secret passed down from one generation to the next, a secret born from a terrible sacrifice. The fire had been fed, not with wood, but with blood. The realization was a punch to the gut. The low, mournful moans that had been a constant sound in the jungle were not just the cries of animals. They were the cries of a people who had learned the secret of fire, a people who had paid a terrible price for it. The fire, the beautiful, life-giving fire, was a thing of death. Its light, a deceptive comfort, was a testament to a horrific truth. To possess the fire, you had to feed it. And the fuel was not wood, but blood. The blood of the old, the weak, the sick. The blood of your own. The revelation was a cold, bitter draught, one that filled Anya with a despair so profound she felt as though she might shatter. The fire, the beacon of hope she had followed, was a monument to murder. The bones she had found, the charred sticks, the deliberate arrangement, it was a message, a horrifying blueprint. The first fire, the first great leap of their kind, was not an accident. It was a choice, a terrible, brutal choice. And now, she held the knowledge. She knew the secret. But what was she to do with it? She returned to the crevice, her mind a frantic, chaotic blur. The others were asleep, their bodies a testament to their exhaustion. Only Jorn was awake, his eyes fixed on her with a low, burning hatred. He had seen the madness in her eyes. He had seen the blood on her hands, the blood of Talo, the blood of their future. He saw her as a monster, and in his eyes, she saw the terrible, ancient law of their world survival above all else. A law that demanded sacrifice. Anya held Kale close, her body trembling. She had a choice. She could tell them the truth. She could tell them the terrible price of fire. But they would not listen. They would not understand. They were too hungry, too desperate, too afraid. They would see it as a means to an end, a new and terrible tool for survival. Or she could keep the secret. She could use it. She could take the fire, not for the group, but for her own, for her son, for a new future, a new beginning. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the silence of the night. A series of low, rhythmic scratching noises from the back of the crevice. It was Jorn. He was sharpening a stone tool, his movements slow and deliberate. The sound was a chilling echo of the one she had heard at the fire. The sound of a tool being made for a purpose of death. He was going to kill her. He was going to take Kale, to lead the group to a new, different kind of survival. A survival born of a lie. The realization was a punch to the gut. She had to act. Now, she moved with a quiet, deliberate speed, her body a shadow in the darkness. She crept to Jorn's side, her hand clutching a small, sharp stone. His back was to her, his concentration absolute. He was a hunter, a killer. But he was also her mate, the father of her son, the man she had loved, and now he was her enemy. The weight of the stone in her hand was a heavy, terrible burden. The choice was not about fire anymore. It was about her life, about Kel's life, about the future. The attack was quick and brutal. The stone, heavy and sharp, came down with a sickening thud. Jorn fell without a sound, his body a silent, broken heap in the darkness. Anya stood over him, her body trembling, her heart a frantic drum against the ribs. She was a killer. She was a monster. The blood on her hands was not from an animal, not from a beast. It was human. It was her own. She had done it. She had made the choice. She had paid the price. Now she had to take the fire. She had to complete the terrible, gruesome ritual. She had to feed it. She had to take the blood of her own kind, the blood of her love, and offer it to the fire. It was the only way. It was the only way to save her son. It was the only way to break the cycle. She would not be a victim. She would be a survivor, a monster, a goddess. She would take the fire, not as a gift, but as a prize, a terrible, blood-soaked prize. The night was a canvas of endless darkness. But in the distance, a new light was about to be born. A light born from a choice so brutal it would echo through the ages. A light born from blood. The fire was a living, breathing thing, a raging inferno of heat and light. Anya, her hands covered in the blood of her mate, stood before it, her body trembling with a mixture of terror and a terrible primal power. She had done it. She had made the sacrifice. The blood of her own kind, the blood of her love, was the fuel she needed. The fire, as if in recognition, seemed to roar louder, its flames dancing and swirling with a new, terrifying energy. The secret was hers. The power was hers. But what was she to do with it? She returned to the crevice, her body a silent, imposing shadow in the darkness. The others, woken by the commotion, stared at her with wide, terrified eyes. They saw the blood. They saw the madness in her eyes. And they saw the fire. The massive, beautiful, terrible fire. They knew. Without a single word, they knew. Jorn was gone. She had killed him. She had killed him for the fire, for the power, for the future. The fear in their eyes was a raw, palpable thing, a collective gasp of horror and disbelief. Anya said nothing. She simply pointed to the fire, her hand slick with blood, a gesture of command. The others, their bodies trembling, followed her. They were no longer a group. They were her followers, her subjects. She had become their god, the god of fire, the god of death. She led them to the massive, smoking carcass of the ankylosaur that Talo had died trying to escape. Its massive body, a testament to its ancient power, was a feast, a miracle. The fire, the beautiful, terrible fire, was their tool, their weapon, their salvation. They butchered the carcass, their hands a frantic, bloody mess. The meat, tough and sinewy, was cooked over the flames, its sizzle and pop a new, intoxicating sound. The scent of roasted meat, a smell they had only dreamed of, filled the air. They ate, their bodies a frenzied mess of desperate, ravenous hunger. They had survived. They had won. The fire, the terrifying, blood-soaked fire, was their prize, their future. But the victory was a hollow one. The taste of the meat was tinged with the memory of Jorn's blood. The warmth of the fire was a constant reminder of the price they had paid. Anya, her body exhausted, her mind a chaotic blur, sat by the fire, Kale asleep in her arms. He was safe. He was warm. He was fed. But at what cost? She looked at the faces of her followers, their eyes, once filled with a fragile hope, now a mask of fear and submission. She had not saved them. She had enslaved them. She had not broken the cycle of violence. She had become the very thing she was trying to prevent. As the night descended, a new sound cut through the silence, a low, rhythmic scratching. It was the sound of a stone tool being sharpened, the sound of fear, the sound of a new, different kind of murder. Anya looked up, her eyes wide with a cold, terrible understanding. The cycle had not been broken. It had been reborn. The fire, the beautiful, terrible fire, had not brought them peace. It had brought them a new, more horrifying kind of war. A war not against the world outside, but against the monster within. And the hunter was no longer a beast with claws and fangs. The hunter was them. The fire was now a permanent fixture in their lives, a constant, flickering beacon in the vast, unforgiving darkness. They were no longer a nomadic, desperate band. They were a tribe of fire, a tribe of blood. The cave, once a temporary shelter, was now their home, its walls a grim canvas for the stories they had etched with sharp stones and animal fat. Stories of the great hunt, stories of the fire, stories of the sacrifice. Anya, the high priestess of the fire, the god of death, sat by the flames, her face a mask of quiet, profound sorrow. The boy, her son Kale, was no longer a small, helpless child. He was a hunter. He was strong. He was fearless. But the hope, the innocence she had once seen in his eyes, was gone. It had been replaced by a cold, hard resolve, a look that mirrored her own. He had been born in the crucible of fire and blood, and it had forged him into a new, more terrible kind of human. He was a survivor, but he was also a killer. The tribe was strong. They were thriving. The fire, their terrible, beautiful god, had given them everything. It had cooked their food, kept the predators at bay, and given them a sense of power, a sense of control over a world that had once been their master. But the price was a constant, knowing presence. The blood rituals, the sacrifices, the unspoken law of their tribe's survival at any cost, even at the cost of your own. The memory of Jorn, the love, the betrayal, the murder, was a ghost that haunted her every waking moment. The blood on her hands was a brand, a mark that could never be washed away. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of glory, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and angry orange, Anya saw something. A group of men, walking across the savannah. They were not their kind. They were different, taller, more erect, their tools more refined, their bodies more powerful. They were not a tribe of fire. They were a tribe of something else, something she couldn't understand. A look of profound, terrible realization washed over her. The cycle had not been broken. It had simply started a new branch, a new path. The fire, the beautiful, terrible fire, had not given them power. It had made them a monster, a god of death. And the new tribe, the new people, had not needed to kill their own. They had simply evolved. They had found a different path. A path not born of fire and blood, but of cooperation, of community, of a different, more gentle kind of survival. The fire, the beautiful, terrible fire, was not a secret. It was a curse that had made them into what they were, a monster, a god of death. And as she looked at her son, his eyes filled with a cold, hard resolve, she knew. The story of the first fire was not a story of a beginning. It was a story of an end. The end of a tribe, the end of a people, the end of a world. The end of a choice that was so terrible it would forever stain the hands of all of humanity.